First, the ban on non-essential travel over the Canada-U.S. border. It's been extended to July 21st, despite calls on both sides of the border to reopen it. Bill Huizenga is a U.S. Republican representative representing the 2nd District of Michigan. He's also the co-chair of the Canada-U.S. Interparliamentary Group. He is in Alexandria, Virginia. Congressman Huizenga, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Your colleague, Congressman Higgins, he had some harsh words for this border extension. He called it BS, but he didn't abbreviate it like I did. How would you describe it?
Well, I would echo that. Look, there's a lot of frustration, we know, on both sides of the border, and it's bipartisan. And the simple fact is we need to be setting up metrics to know and understand what goals need to be achieved so that this border can open again. And those have not been laid out by either side that in a transparent, clear way, as best that we've been able to tell. So it's time to open the border. We know that we can do it for vital economic reasons going back and forth. And if we can do it for that, it seems to me the science will also dictate that we can do it for those that need to cross the border to see family or to be with their property or to, frankly, enjoy the culture that happens on both sides of the border.
You talk about a metric. I mean, what do you want to see there? I mean, have you got a sense of what you think the appropriate benchmark would be? Because there's a lot of anxiety about vaccination rates and the disparities in some of the places. Yeah. What do you think is appropriate here?
Well, I think we're there personally. You look at the vaccination rates. You look at the natural inoculation that has happened as well. I mean, we used to talk about herd immunity all the time, right? And that's a combination of both natural immunity through people who have had COVID as well as those who have gotten the vaccine. But setting that all aside, again, it seems to me that we've been able to do this in a safe and reasonably low risk manner for commercial traffic going back and forth. Why can't we do that for personal traffic as well?
But when you talk about reopening, are you talking about reopening just for fully vaccinated people or for absolutely everyone? Because I sure don't get the sense that there's an appetite in Canada to open up for unvaccinated travelers from abroad.
Well, it seems to me that as long as you can provide a test that shows you are COVID-free, you should be able to go back and forth. Now, having said that, I understand there's going to be different standards. That was sort of what was happening in the different states. You look at New York versus Michigan versus other places, and I understand that. But at some point, the science is the science. And we need to pull the politics out of that science, and that also, in my mind, means people who are have an immunization that is a natural or a vaccination. So either way, it seems to me that we ought to move forward with that. But kind of going back to your first question. What are those standards and those metrics? Well, let's have those developed. Let's have those discussed, and let's have those agreed upon by both the Biden regime as well as the Trudeau regime. Mm-hmm. And that will go a long way so that we at least know what target to shoot for.
I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding you. Do you simply mean a negative test without any proof of vaccination or proof of illness and recovery should be enough? Or is it a negative test in conjunction with documents to show that you have some immunity to COVID-19?
Well, I can tell you that certainly in Michigan and a lot of other states, they are passing laws that do not allow for the use of a vaccine passport, quote unquote. So it's going to be difficult having that at an international border. But I understand that there can and should be some sort of standard that is in place. Mm-hmm. And whether it is a negative test within a certain period of time, which is, right now, frankly, I'm working with some constituents who are stuck in Liberia, who have to provide, who had COVID after they had the vaccine, I might add. They got COVID while they were in Liberia, and they have to produce a negative test to be able to even return to the United States. That's reasonable, right? So whether there is some sort of antibody measurement or immunity that's either through vaccination or naturally, it makes sense as long as you can prove that you don't have COVID. That to me makes sense. But I understand, governments may come up with a different answer. I just want them to be clear and upfront with what that answer is.
Well, scientists may come up with a different answer too, right? Especially with the emergence of variants and the Delta variant. It's delayed the reopening in the United Kingdom by a month. It's going at a pretty alarming clip. I mean, not COVID overall, but the Delta variant, certainly here in the biggest province in Ontario. So I mean, given the emergence of that variant in particular and what it's done in India, I mean, what do you say to people who say we just can't reopen until we get to about 75% full vaccination, at least here in this country?
But that's not been clearly identified, correct? I mean, that has not been what has been laid out, and what it feels like to so many citizens on both sides of the border. You know, I have family through my wife who live in Canada. It feels like those goalposts keep moving. It certainly feels like it's ad hoc policymaking, and we need to have some transparency and clear guidelines as to what that's going to be. So that's part of what my call is in the letter that I've joined with Mr. Higgins, my colleague from New York, is to say, look, let's get these two administrations working together to have common goals. Now we can debate what those common goals are, but let's get them out there, and let's have some consensus on that, so it doesn't feel like we're comparing apples and oranges.
My sense is we're going to hear something maybe as early as Monday from the federal government, and that's the day that the order in council that extends the border closures rolls over, and it's going to be extended for another month. And we're going to hear something on more timelines on when things will start to be eased. For example, the idea of getting rid of hotel quarantines here in Canada for citizens and permanent residents who are vaccinated and come back and test negative. So what do you want to see Monday? Because I think if it's Monday or if it's Tuesday, they're going to tell us what phase 1 may look like, what phase 2 may look like, what phase 3 may look like. Is that soon enough for you in right now?
Well, you know, again,
Probably not.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that border open now. I think that we have the ability to move back and people back and forth. And what I really am hoping for, though, is clarity and actually sticking to what that means, right? And that has been the frustration that so many people have, including my own family, where the lockdown clearly hasn't stemmed the whole tide as had been predicted. So what else can we do here? And again, I'm afraid that whether it's here in the United States or whether it's in Canada, between Premier Ford and the Prime Minister, you know, there tends to be some politics that are in those decisions, and I want to make sure they're scientific. Which then again is the whole discussion about whether it's natural immunization or vaccine immunization. Something. Let's make sure we have some consensus, scientific consensus. And as you point out, David, that has been difficult. I haven't had 3 doctors tell me the same opinion yet on what exactly is going on, other than there seems to be a consensus. We're moving in the right direction. We've been able to open up the state of Michigan. We've been able to open up New York and New York City, for crying out loud. We should be able to get this border opened up as well.
Yeah, but Congressman, you're giving specific sort of, I guess, state and city level examples there. I mean, do you think your argument would be easier to make if American vaccination rates got higher? Because you have a top line high volume, but there's a great disparity in the states, with some well below 50%. And I guess that becomes an argument against reopening when you have some border states with less than 40% vaccination rates.
Well, and I'm saying that Ontario and that Canada ought to be able to come into the United States. It cannot just be about those metrics. You have to look at hospitalizations. You have to look at infection rates. You have to look at what's happening. And the consensus scientifically that I have heard from medical professionals is we have moved beyond the major question marks. We know how to deal with this. We know that there is a way of having low risk, and that's the key. You know, I did an interview not that long ago while I was driving on the highway out to Washington, D.C. I wasn't driving; I was in the passenger car. But as I'm going down the highway, I said to the interviewer, "Look, if I was doing 25 miles an hour, there is no doubt I would be a lot safer than doing 70 miles an hour. But that's not productive. Now, if I was doing 120 miles an hour, that would be a little different than doing 70 miles an hour, and that would be reckless. So somewhere in this, we've got to find some consensus as to what that acceptable level of risk is for citizens on both sides of the border."
Okay. Congressman Huizenga, thanks so much for your time.
All right. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.